She was about to head outside to tend to the small flower bed when a sudden knock jolted her. It was firm. Too firm. Not Lucas. Not a delivery man. Not someone from the neighborhood. Her breath caught in her throat. She opened the door slowly and froze. Peter. He stood there thinner than before, eyes sunken and desperate. His once neatly groomed hair now clung to his forehead, greasy and unkempt. He wore a shirt that looked 2 days old and shoes that had clearly seen better times. "Amelia," he breathed, his voice hoarse. "Thank God I found you." She didn't move, couldn't. Her hands tightened around the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly, her voice low and sharp. I've made mistakes. I know that now," he said, wringing his hands. "I've been lost without you. The money, it's gone. I was stupid, Em. So stupid. But I'm here now. I want to fix things. We can start over." "Start over?" she cut him off. "After everything you did to me? You think I would ever—" "Please," he interrupted, stepping forward, his eyes wild now. "I'm begging you. Just a place to stay. A meal. I'm not asking for much. You were always good to me." She backed away instinctively. "No, Peter, this chapter is closed. I'm not that woman anymore." His face twisted in frustration. "So what? You're with someone else now? Some rich guy fixing your life like you're some damsel in distress? That's none of your business. Leave now," she said firmly. But Peter wasn't listening anymore. "You ungrateful little—" he snarled, stepping inside, grabbing her by the arm. "I gave you 3 years of my life, and now you think you're better than me? Let go of me," she yelled, struggling. In the midst of the chaos, the front door swung open. Lucas. He had come by to take her out for lunch, something light to distract her, to brighten her day. But instead, he found her fighting off a man. This man, clearly trying to hurt her. "Hey!" Lucas bellowed. Peter turned just in time to see a fist flying toward his face. The punch was swift and brutal. Peter staggered back, crashed into the small coffee table, then dropped to the floor, blood spilling from his nose. Lucas stood over him, his chest heaving, fists clenched. "Touch her again and I swear—" Amelia was frozen. Her whole body was trembling. The past had just clawed its way back, and for a moment, she was that helpless woman again. Lucas turned to her, his face softening instantly. "Em, come here." She collapsed into his arms, hugging him so tightly, her entire frame shaking with the force of it. The sun filtered gently through the large windows of the small, ivory-painted cottage nestled deep in the heart of Victoria Island. Amelia stood still for a moment, the dusting cloth limp in her hands, taking in the scent of lemon cleaner and aged wood. It had been a long, exhausting morning of cleaning, sweeping, and vacuuming, but for the first time in years, she felt a sense of control. The house was hers, bought with a good portion of her divorce settlement and a desperate need to begin again. Lagos was loud, alive, and unpredictable, but it was far from the haunting memories of her brief and destructive marriage to Peter. Peter had been everything she thought she needed: charming, attentive, affectionate. When they met, she had been vulnerable. Her parents had just died in a tragic skiing accident in London, and she had returned to Nigeria with nothing but grief and luggage. He had met her with flowers, promises, and the kind of attention that felt like healing. But it wasn't. Peter had been a performance artist of manipulation. The flowers wilted, the promises crumbled, and beneath the charm was a narcissistic man who thrived on control. The emotional wounds he left weren't visible, but they ran deep. And now, with trembling fingers and a fiercely beating heart, she had finally left. She had picked up the pieces and come to Lagos to start anew. She glanced outside, surveying the neat pile of dry leaves, paper, and dust she had gathered into a corner of the yard. Burning the dirt felt symbolic, therapeutic even. She needed to let go of the past, of pain, of Peter. Striking the match, she knelt beside the pile, watching the flame slowly catch and dance. But within minutes it turned wild. Too wild. The dry Harmattan breeze fed the fire hungrily, and the flames began to surge, licking at the grass and crawling toward the wall. Panic gripped her. She grabbed a bucket of water from inside the house, only to return and find the fire had already grown larger than her effort could contain. Before she could act, a dark figure burst through the hedges, his tall form commanding and urgent. He carried not one but two fire extinguishers, his eyes ablaze with something fiercer than the fire. In seconds, he tackled the flames with precision, dousing the growing chaos with powerful bursts of foam. Amelia stood frozen, water sloshing from her bucket, shame and disbelief washing over her. As the smoke cleared, he turned to her with a mixture of exhaustion and fury. "What were you thinking?" he barked. "Do you want to burn down the whole neighborhood?" She opened her mouth to explain, but couldn't find the words. "You need to be more careful and less careless," he continued, his voice sharp. "How exactly were you planning to put out that kind of fire with a bucket of water?" Amelia stared down at the now useless bucket in her hands, feeling like a scolded child. His tone sliced deeper than it should have. Her healing journey was fragile. She didn't need another man barking orders at her. "Don't tell me you're careless and dumb," he muttered, more to himself than to her. She froze. Who the hell was this man? With as much composure as she could muster, she said calmly, "Thank you for your great assistance, Mr." He straightened, brushing soot from his shirt. "Mr. Lucas, and make sure not to burn your house down along with mine. I live right next door." She nodded, biting back the sting of his tone. "Noted." He gave her one last pointed look and walked off through the hedge. Amelia watched him disappear before turning back into her house, her breath shaky but even. She didn't want trouble. She just wanted peace and a clean start. Amelia didn't speak of the fire incident to anyone, not that she had anyone to tell. She continued cleaning, scrubbing the floor, washing the soot off the edges of the walls. The smoke had left a faint mark, but the damage wasn't deep. The shame, however, lingered. She found herself thinking about Lucas, not just his scolding or the way he'd saved the day, but his eyes, sharp and serious, and the way he had moved with such command. Who was he really? She'd never been one to get distracted easily, but something about Lucas's presence had shifted something inside her. Maybe it was because he didn't seem to care who she was. He didn't flirt, he didn't charm, he judged and left. And maybe that was what unnerved her. Across the hedge, Lucas lounged on the edge of his bed, still in the shirt he had worn earlier, the scent of smoke and ash lingering faintly. It was well past midnight, and his room was dim, lit only by the blue light of the television playing something he wasn't watching. He'd been flipping channels for hours, tossing and turning in bed like a man unsettled. He couldn't get her out of his head. The woman with the careless fire and the careless eyes. She had looked at him like he was annoying, not impressive. That wasn't something Lucas was used to. Women didn't just brush him off, they blushed. They batted lashes, they lingered. But not her. No apologies, no excuses. Just a nod, a thank you, and back to scrubbing floors. He sat up and ran a hand over his jaw. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she was. It was something else. A calm around her that felt a little too quiet. A sadness in her eyes he hadn't noticed until after he'd calmed down. He didn't do curious. He didn't chase. Lucas had everything he wanted. The cars, the estate, the private beach house in Ibiza, and an endless line of women who smiled too easily. Happy ever after wasn't in his dictionary, nor, yet here he was, thinking about a woman with a soot-streaked cheek and a bucket of water. He sighed and threw his head back on the pillow. Forget it, he muttered, but he couldn't. And on the other side of the hedge, Amelia sat in bed, reading a worn novel and failing, not to picture the stranger with fire extinguishers and fury in his voice. Neither of them knew it yet, but that fire had started more than flames. It had sparked something neither of them was ready for. Lucas had been working from home for days now. The weather had taken on a familiar chill. a rare coolness in Lagos that made most residents turn to their fireplaces or chimneys for warmth. He was no exception. That morning he had ignited a small flame in his own chimney, appreciating the soft crackle and glow as he immersed himself in spreadsheets and contracts. But around mid-afternoon, needing a break, Lucas stepped out onto his poolside lounge. He sipped a glass of chilled mango juice and leaned back, letting the breeze wash over his skin, until something caught his eye. Thick, dark smoke billowed into the sky from the direction of his neighbor's cottage. No, not again. Dropping his glass, he rose and moved to the edge of the fence. Sure enough, the smoke was coming from her chimney. Disbelief curled into frustration. This woman, he muttered, she really loves fire. He didn't waste another second. Fire service or not, he wasn't going to sit back this time. He leapt over the low wall dividing their yards and made his way to her front lawn. There she was, calmly tending to a small flower bed, as if her roof wasn't one flame away from collapsing. "Are you serious right now?" he demanded. Amelia looked up, a bit startled, but instantly sighed. "You again. Your house is literally on fire, and you're here gardening." She stood up and dusted her palms. "It's just the chimney. It's been really chill today, and I wanted to be warm, that's all." He didn't reply. Without another word, Lucas ran into the house. The fire hadn't spread much yet, but another 5 minutes, and it could have gotten dangerous. He grabbed the fire extinguisher mounted near the entry and got to work, forcing it under control just as the fire service arrived. The firefighters helped douse the remnants and check the damage, but the aftermath was obvious. Smoke had crawled into every crevice of the cottage. The cozy walls were now stained, the living room damp and cluttered with foam and ash. Amelia stood in the doorway, visibly shaken. She turned slowly, her voice barely audible. "It wasn't supposed to get this bad." Lucas looked around and then at her. "This place isn't safe for the night. Get a bag and come with me." She blinked. "Excuse me? You're not staying here tonight. Get a few essentials. You're coming to my house. We'll figure this out tomorrow." She shook her head. No, I'm fine. I'm not asking," he cut in, firm but calm. "You need a warm bed and a hot meal. That's it. Let's go." Amelia hesitated. This was the same man who had insulted her, called her careless and dumb. And now he was offering kindness? Protection? Who was this man? And why did she suddenly feel like she needed saving? She turned back, walked inside, and grabbed a small bag. Minutes later, she was sitting in Lucas's sleek, black SUV, her heart pounding louder than ever. As they pulled out of the driveway, leaving her smoky cottage behind, she whispered to herself, "What in God's name am I doing?" They arrived at his mansion just as the skies began to deepen into a romantic dusk. Amelia sat quietly in the passenger seat, unsure of what to make of Lucas anymore. The same man who had snapped at her so bluntly now exuded calm, cool hospitality. As they stepped into the house, she was taken aback by the grandeur. Sleek marble floors, soft recessed lighting, and elegant touches that hinted at a refined taste. She hadn't expected it to be this stunning. "Make yourself at home," Lucas said casually, removing his jacket and tossing it on the couch. "The house help should be back soon to whip up dinner. But if you're hungry, I can throw something together myself." "I'm fine," she replied quickly, but Lucas just stared at her, a brow arched. "You can't come in here, almost burn your house down and then not eat." "I insist." Before she could respond, he nodded toward the hallway. "Come, I'll show you to your room. Take a shower, get comfortable. I'll go have mine. We'll meet at the dining table." The room he led her to was beautiful. Warm tones, soft linens, and a faint scent of lavender. She stood there for a moment, overwhelmed by the strangeness of it all. Just days ago, her life was cloaked in dust and ash. Now she stood wrapped in comfort, in a stranger's home, who was both cold and kind. As she ran herself a warm bath, she explored the space. The bathroom was exquisite. Mosaic tiles, gold-trimmed fixtures, and a large soaking tub that begged her to forget her troubles, even if just for a moment. She slipped into the water, letting it cradle her aching muscles and scattered thoughts. Wrapped in a towel, still undecided on what to wear, a knock startled her. She assumed it was the house help returning to check on dinner, but when she opened the door, her breath hitched. It was Lucas. He looked freshly showered, the top buttons of his shirt undone, revealing the slightest hint of toned chest beneath. He was undeniably beautiful. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I thought you were ready," he said, voice low and a bit amused, eyes flickering briefly across her towel-clad form. "But I'll wait for you at the dining table." She nodded awkwardly, and before she could speak, he added, "Don't take too long. Food's almost ready." Then he left, leaving her leaning against the door, her heart pounding. "This is a bad idea," she whispered to herself, shaking her head. Dinner was already set by the time she walked into the dining room, now dressed in a simple but elegant maxi dress she found in her overnight bag. Lucas was seated, a glass of wine in hand. A plate of steamy jollof rice and grilled chicken sat before him. "You clean up well," he commented. She offered a soft smile. "Thanks. Smells good." "House help just left. But I seasoned chicken myself," he said with a wink. She couldn't help but laugh, and it was a strange sound, free, light. As they ate, the atmosphere shifted. Lucas was no longer the man who had insulted her outside the cottage. He was relaxed, playful, and curious. "So what do you do when you're not starting fires?" he teased. She rolled her eyes with a smile. "I work from home. I'm a software engineer." "No, seriously, you don't look the type." "What does that mean?" she asked, laughing. "You just seem artsy, creative, not someone who writes code all day." "Well, I do. I studied in London. Moved back after after everything." Lucas caught the pause. "Why Lagos? Why that cottage? And why are you always doing everything by yourself? You clearly need help." The smile on her face vanished. Her eyes darkened, her fork stilled. Lucas knew instantly he'd said too much. "Sorry, forget I asked. I didn't mean to pry." "No, it's fine." She took a breath. "I moved to Lagos because I had no one else. My parents died in a skiing accident, and after my marriage, I needed to start over. That cottage? It's all I could afford with what was left after the divorce, and I do things alone because I have no one. I'm all I've got." Lucas sat back in his chair, stunned. "I was married for 3 years," she continued, "to a man who drained the life out of me, Peter. At first he was perfect, sweet, kind, but it was all a lie. He love-bombed me, and by the time I realized who he truly was, I was already trapped." Lucas's jaw tightened. "He refused to work, stole from me, constantly lied. When I'd speak up, he'd lash out, sometimes with words, sometimes with his hands. I tried to fix it. I stayed for 2 more years thinking love could heal him. But I was breaking every day until I couldn't anymore. I left." Lucas was fuming inside. Any man who laid hands on a woman was not a man, and to hear how she had been manipulated, stripped of dignity, it made his blood boil. Yet as he looked at her now, he realized something else. She wasn't just broken, she was surviving, healing, trying. "I'm sorry," he said, voice softer than she expected. She gave a slight nod, pushing food around her plate. "I don't usually ask this many questions," he said, trying to smile. "I'm not the sensitive type." "Oh, I could tell," she replied dryly, and they both laughed. Lucas leaned back in his chair, watching her. She was unlike any woman he'd met. Most women were drawn to him. His money, his confidence, his looks. He never got attached. Casual encounters, no strings. But Amelia didn't seem to care about any of that. She intrigued him. "What about you?" she asked, sipping her drink. "What do you do, apart from playing fireman?" He chuckled. "Architect. I design homes, mostly high-end projects." "Interesting. So you build the homes people dream of. And you probably build the systems that run them," he said, raising his glass in a toast. She smiled and clinked hers gently against his. The evening ended with less awkwardness than it started. She offered to do the dishes, but he waved her off. As she walked back to the guest room, Lucas watched her retreating figure and felt something stir inside him. Echo. He didn't do relationships. He didn't do emotions. But this woman, this fire starter with a wounded heart and fierce independence, was getting under his skin. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure that was a bad thing. After dinner, they sat for a little while longer in the grand living room. The soft hum of jazz music played in the background, filtering through hidden speakers, and the golden lights gave the entire room a serene, calming glow. They didn't talk much more. A few laughs here and there, some soft silences that weren't uncomfortable. Then they said their goodnights and retired to their respective rooms. Lucas lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wasn't coming easily. For a man who had always lived life on his terms, no commitments, no attachments, no complications, he was surprised by how much this woman was affecting him. Amelia was different. She wasn't trying to impress him, wasn't throwing herself at him like others had. She was beautiful, but it wasn't just her looks. There was a quiet strength in her, an honesty that pulled at him. He had never believed in love, not the forever kind. He had seen too many fake versions of it, women pretending, men manipulating, hearts broken for selfish reasons. But something in her story shook him. She had loved and lost, not through death but through disappointment, through betrayal. She had given everything and received nothing. Lucas never thought of himself as someone who could care deeply, but something inside him had shifted. He wanted to protect her. The thought scared him. He got out of bed, walked out onto the balcony overlooking the city, and pulled out his phone. It was late, but he didn't care. He made several calls to a cleaning agency, a renovation company, an interior design team. If Amelia was going to heal, she couldn't do it in a burned, broken-down cottage. He remembered exactly where she had placed her spare key before they left earlier. When the workers arrived early the next morning, he gave them access and instructed them to transform the space. It was no longer about charity. It was about giving her something that reminded her she was worthy of comfort, of beauty, of love. They worked all morning and into the afternoon. The cleaning crew scrubbed every inch, making the walls, windows, and floors sparkle. The renovation team fixed the minor burns and damages caused by the chimney fire. New appliances arrived: a refrigerator, stove, microwave. He even had fresh groceries delivered, stocked with everything she might need. Little touches, like soft throw pillows, an art piece for the wall, and delicate lighting fixtures, completed the transformation. Lucas made sure Amelia remained at his home the entire time. He distracted her with small talk, asked about her favorite movies, got her laughing over breakfast, and even challenged her to a chess game in the lounge. She was good, better than he expected. She beat him once, and he made a mental note to never underestimate her again. During those hours, Lucas found himself leaning into her presence more than he meant to. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she laughed, the calm in her voice, the sharpness of her wit. It was all becoming too familiar, too enticing. He noticed little things, how she always reached for the corner of her napkin to wipe her fingers delicately, how she hummed softly to herself when something amused her. By the time evening arrived, he said casually, "I think it's time to take you home." She was hesitant. "Are you kicking me out?" she teased. He smirked. "You'll understand when you get there." As they drove to the cottage, Amelia grew quiet. Something in his tone had been different. When they pulled into the driveway, she stared at the front door. Everything looked different. "Lucas, what did you do?" He didn't answer. "Go see for yourself." She got out slowly, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The air smelled clean, like lavender and lemon. The lights flicked on to reveal freshly painted walls, gleaming wood floors, and her tiny living room transformed into a cozy haven. The kitchen sparkled with new appliances, soft lighting, and a vase of white lilies on the counter. Her jaw dropped. She stepped slowly through each room, touching surfaces, inspecting details. Her once bare bedroom now had fresh sheets, new curtains, and a plush rug beside the bed. In the bathroom, soft white towels were neatly folded, and even her toiletries were organized. It was perfect, too perfect. Tears welled up in her eyes. Not because she was ungrateful, but because she didn't understand why someone would do this. No one had ever done something so kind without expecting something in return. Suddenly, fear clutched at her chest. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the cottage, the front door slamming behind her. She drove straight back to Lucas's mansion. The gate opened, and she walked in without knocking, finding him exactly where she expected, by the poolside, stroking his dog. "Lucas," she snapped. He turned, eyebrows raised. "You had no right to let strangers into my house, to fix my house without my consent," she said, her voice shaking. He looked surprised but calm. "I just wanted to do something nice for you. I didn't ask you to, and now I feel like I owe you something in return. I don't have anything to offer you," she spat. Lucas stood and walked toward her, the dog obediently staying behind. "Who did this to you, Em?" he asked softly. "Who made you believe that every act of kindness comes with a price tag?" She opened her mouth to argue but faltered. "I don't want anything from you," he said gently. "I just wanted to make you smile, to remind you that you matter, that you're worthy." She looked at him, tears clinging to her lashes. "No one has ever done something like this for me. Not without asking for something back," she whispered. "Then let this be the first," he replied. The moment stretched. Then without thinking, she stepped forward and hugged him. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was raw and emotional. A girl finding shelter in a storm. He held her close and whispered against her hair, "You're worthy, Em, and I'll keep saying it until you believe it." She clung to him tightly, afraid of what it meant, afraid of how easily he made her feel safe. Deep inside her heart, something cracked open, a tiny light in the middle of her pain. For the first time in a long time, she felt hope. And Lucas, for the first time in forever, felt like he wanted to be the kind of man who could be someone's home. This wasn't just the beginning of healing. It was the beginning of something neither of them expected. It was the beginning of love. And neither of them was ready, but somehow it didn't matter. They had found each other in the fire, and maybe, just maybe, they would find healing in it too. The morning sun filtered through Amelia's freshly cleaned windows, casting golden rays onto her new floors and walls. The cottage looked nothing like it did before. It was warmer now, alive, like someone had infused it with hope. She stood by the window, fingers wrapped around a steaming mug of tea, still trying to grasp the reality of it all. Lucas had done this, not for praise or to gain her favor, just because he cared. That thought alone unsettled her in ways she wasn't ready to confront. She was about to head outside to tend to the small flower bed when a sudden knock jolted her. It was firm, too firm. Not Lucas, not a delivery man, not someone from the neighborhood. Her breath caught in her throat. She opened the door slowly and froze. Peter. He stood there thinner than before, eyes sunken and desperate. His once neatly groomed hair now clung to his forehead, greasy and unkempt. He wore a shirt that looked 2 days old and shoes that had clearly seen better times. "Amelia," he breathed, his voice hoarse. "Thank God I found you." She didn't move, couldn't. Her hands tightened around the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly, her voice low and sharp. I've made mistakes. I know that now," he said, wringing his hands. "I've been lost without you. The money, it's gone. I was stupid, Em. So stupid. But I'm here now. I want to fix things. We can start over." "Start over?" she cut him off. "After everything you did to me? You think I would ever—" "Please," he interrupted, stepping forward, his eyes wild now. "I'm begging you. Just a place to stay. A meal. I'm not asking for much. You were always good to me." She backed away instinctively. "No, Peter, this chapter is closed. I'm not that woman anymore." His face twisted in frustration. So what? You're with someone else now? Some rich guy fixing your life like you're some damsel in distress? That's none of your business. Leave now, she said firmly. But Peter wasn't listening anymore. You ungrateful little, he snarled, stepping inside, grabbing her by the arm. I gave you 3 years of my life, and now you think you're better than me? Let go of me, she yelled, struggling. In the midst of the chaos, the front door swung open. Lucas. He had come by to take her out for lunch, something light to distract her, to brighten her day. But instead, he found her fighting off a man. This man, clearly trying to hurt her. Hey, Lucas bellowed. Peter turned just in time to see a fist flying toward his face. The punch was swift and brutal. Peter staggered back, crashed into the small coffee table, then dropped to the floor, blood spilling from his nose. Lucas stood over him, his chest heaving, fists clenched. Touch her again and I swear, Amelia was frozen. Her whole body was trembling. The past had just clawed its way back, and for a moment, she was that helpless woman again. Lucas turned to her, his face softening instantly. Em, come here. She collapsed into his arms, hugging him so tightly, her entire frame shaking with the force of it. Thank you, she whispered, voice cracked. Thank you for coming to my aid. He held her close, protectively, as the sirens began wailing in the distance. The police arrived moments later. Lucas had already called them, while she was frozen in fear. They took Peter away, still cursing and yelling, until he was silenced by the car door slamming shut. Lucas didn't ask, he didn't say much. He just led her back into the cottage gently, helped her gather a few things, then took her back to his place. You're staying with me, he said with no room for argument. I'm not letting you out of my sight. She didn't protest this time. The shock had dulled her pride. That night, Amelia sat on the sofa in one of Lucas's oversized hoodies, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the dancing flames in his fireplace. He sat across from her, silent but watchful. She looked smaller than usual, fragile even. The strong, sharp woman he had seen over the last few days was now buried beneath a blanket of fear and flashbacks. I thought I was free, she murmured suddenly. I thought I left that nightmare behind. I thought he'd let me go. Lucas walked over and sat beside her. He won't come near you again, Em. Not as long as I'm breathing. She turned her eyes to him, red, teary, but fierce. Why do you care so much? He stared into the fire for a long moment before answering. Because you deserve better. Because no one should have to live in fear. Because, he hesitated. She turned to face him fully now. Because? Lucas inhaled deeply, then looked straight into her eyes. Because I care about you more than I want to admit, and it's driving me insane. Amelia blinked, stunned. I know I'm not perfect, he continued. Hell, I've been the opposite of what a good man should be most of my life. I've never believed in forever, or loyalty, or love. But you've changed something in me. And tonight, when I saw him about to hurt you, something inside me snapped. I knew I'd never forgive myself if anything ever happened to you. She swallowed hard, emotions tangled in her chest. I don't know what the future looks like, Lucas said quietly, but I know I want you in mine. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. For the first time in years, someone wasn't asking her to sacrifice. Someone was offering her a place to heal. But why me? She asked, her voice small. He smiled faintly. Because you're real. Because you're strong. And you don't even know it. Because when you look at me, I feel like I could be a better man. Silence stretched between them. Lucas reached out, gently brushing her hair away from her face. You don't have to say anything now. I just needed you to know. Amelia nodded slowly. Then leaning into his shoulder, she whispered, Thank you for seeing me, for saving me. He rested his chin on her head and wrapped an arm around her. You're safe now, Em, with me. But deep inside, he wondered, would she ever believe it was real? The days after Peter's arrest were strangely quiet, but not heavy. Lucas remained steady, never pushing, always present. He didn't try to fix Amelia with empty words or force her to smile through the pain. Instead, he created a space where she could just be, and slowly that space became her sanctuary. Each morning, Lucas would leave a small note beside her tea. Sometimes a quote, sometimes a silly line like, "Today is a no-crying day, unless we cry from laughing." She'd smile at them. Little by little, her heart unclenched. One evening, the sky blushed in orange and lavender, and Lucas walked into the guest lounge looking for her. He found the room empty, but something caught his eye. An old leather folder peeking from beneath a throw blanket. Curious, he picked it up and opened it. Inside were drawings, dozens of them. Stunning charcoal sketches, soft watercolors, pencil strokes so alive they seemed to breathe. Portraits of faces, some sad, some laughing, all of them real. Moments captured in ink. A woman curled up on a windowsill. A child reaching for sunlight. A man crumbling into smoke. Lucas sat down slowly, flipping through them one by one, completely transfixed. He didn't hear her walk in until her soft gasp cut through the air. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said, startled. He looked up, brows raised. "Why not?" "Because..." She wrapped her arms around herself. "They're nothing, really. Just a hobby. I don't even think they're good. I've never shown anyone. People wouldn't care." Lucas stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood, closing the folder gently. "Amelia," he said seriously, "you have more talent in your little finger than half the artists I've seen at exhibitions. These pieces are stunning." She laughed nervously, brushing her hair behind her ear. "You don't have to say that. I'm not just saying it, I mean it. These are honest. They feel that's rare. This..." He lifted one of the sketches. "This is you, isn't it?" She nodded slowly. "I see you now," he said, "and I think it's time the world does too." Amelia didn't know what Lucas had done until 3 days later. He came into the kitchen one morning, unusually excited. "We have somewhere to be today." "Where?" "Just trust me." The car ride was filled with anticipation, and when they pulled up in front of a modern art gallery in the heart of Lagos, Amelia froze. "Lucas, what is this?" He didn't answer, just smiled, took her hand, and led her inside. The moment they stepped through the doors, her breath caught in her throat, her art. Her pieces, framed, hanging on the walls, spotlit like treasures. Each one labeled simply, and untitled. People were walking through, stopping in front of them, admiring them, discussing them. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I called in a favor. A friend of mine owns this gallery. I showed him your folder, and he nearly lost his mind. He curated this overnight, told me he'd never seen anything so raw and real in years." "But why?" she asked, eyes brimming with tears. "Because I wanted you to see yourself the way I see you. Talented, special, enough." She didn't speak. She couldn't. The words wouldn't come. She walked slowly through the room, taking in the reactions of strangers standing before her work. Some took pictures. One older woman wiped away tears after studying a portrait of a young girl holding a wilted flower. Then the gallery owner approached with a smile. "Miss Amelia, I have good news. Every single piece has been sold." Her knees almost gave way. What?" Lucas held her hand tighter. "People care, Amelia. They see you. They feel you." Tears spilled from her eyes, but this time they weren't from fear, heartbreak, or regret. These were tears of release, of recognition, of healing. And standing there in that warm gallery full of strangers, moved by her soul on paper, she realized something. She trusted him. Lucas didn't just tell her she was worthy. He proved it. He didn't want to own her, fix her, or take from her. He wanted her to be fully, bravely, beautifully. She turned to him and with her heart pounding whispered, "I think I'm falling for you, Lucas." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Good," he said gently, "because I've already fallen." And just like that, the girl who once thought she was too broken to be loved found her person in the most unexpected way. Through art, through kindness, through being seen, Amelia stood in the gallery long after most of the visitors had left. It had felt like a dream, people marveling at her work, pointing, discussing, admiring. A woman had even asked if there were prints available for sale. By the end of the night, every single piece had been sold. Every single one. She kept staring at the empty spaces on the walls where her drawings had been just hours earlier. Lucas watched her silently from the corner, leaning against the wall, hands tucked into his pockets, giving her room to feel everything. When she finally turned toward him, her expression said it all: overwhelmed, grateful, humbled beyond words. She walked to him, slow and sure, and when she stood in front of him, she didn't say, "Thank you," this time. She wrapped her arms around his waist, buried her head in his chest, and just stood there. Lucas held her. No words needed. That night, back at the house, Amelia couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the gallery, the way people reacted, the pride in Lucas's eyes. She hadn't believed in herself in years. That kind of belief had been beaten out of her emotionally, by life, by Peter, by disappointment. But Lucas had handed it back to her without asking anything in return. She got out of bed and walked quietly toward the poolside, the moon glowing across the water. Lucas was already there, as though he'd known she'd come. He looked up and smiled gently. Couldn't sleep? She shook her head, walking to him. There's something about silence that suddenly feels beautiful. They sat together. She rested her head on his shoulder, and after a long pause, she whispered, "You made me feel seen. I don't think I've ever felt that before." He looked down at her. "That's all I ever wanted to do, Em." "I was scared," she admitted. "Still am." "So am I," he replied. "But I'm done running." She looked at him, heart pounding. The quiet between them grew warm. "I think," she hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. "I think I'm falling for you." His eyes didn't waver. "I've already fallen." She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek, and he wiped it gently with his thumb. Then, slowly, carefully, he leaned in and kissed her. Not rushed, not hungry, just deep and tender. It felt like home, like a beginning. She kissed him back. No walls, no fear. Just them. When they pulled apart, Lucas whispered, "You're not alone anymore, Amelia. Not ever again." And for the first time in years, she believed it. The days that followed were nothing short of beautiful. Lucas and Amelia moved with a new rhythm now. Their connection felt like sunlight, gentle, persistent, and healing. They cooked breakfast together, teased each other over card games, and spent long hours talking about everything and nothing. She started painting again, and he would sit nearby just to watch her work. It was quiet magic, the kind that settled into your bones. But just as peace was becoming familiar, the past came knocking again. It was a cloudy Thursday afternoon when Amelia received a letter. No return address. Just her name, scrawled in hasty ink. She sat on the porch, fingers trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside were a few photographs, old ones, of her and Peter from years ago. But something else was tucked between the photos, a handwritten note. "You may have run, but I still remember. And I'm not done with you yet. P." Her heart stopped. She stared at the words, unable to breathe. After everything, after his arrest, after her healing, he still had a grip on her. The shadows she thought she had left behind were clawing back at her light. Lucas came outside moments later, a cup of tea in hand, but when he saw the look on her face and the crumpled letter in her lap, he knew. "Em," he said, his voice steady but low. "What is it?" She handed him the letter without a word. His eyes narrowed as he read it. He folded it slowly, face unreadable. "I'll handle it." "No!" she said quickly. I don't want to drag you into this again. He knelt in front of her. Listen to me. You don't have to fight alone anymore. We do this together. That night, Lucas made calls. Friends in security, private investigators. He wanted Peter tracked and watched, not to harm him, but to ensure Amelia's safety. A few days later, they learned Peter had been released on bail and was attempting to manipulate others into intimidating Amelia, trying to scare her back into silence. But this time, she didn't crumble. With Lucas beside her, she filed an official restraining order. And when Peter's threat grew bolder, sending another message through a mutual acquaintance, Lucas had a quiet but firm conversation with the man. Word spread, and Peter vanished once more. The twist hadn't broken them. It had only clarified something essential. Amelia wasn't just surviving anymore. She was choosing to live, and she wasn't doing it alone. Weeks later, Amelia stood in front of a blank canvas in her new art studio, courtesy of Lucas, who insisted she deserved her own space. As she dipped her brush into paint, she turned and looked at him. I was so scared when that letter came, she said softly. Not just of Peter, but of losing this, us. Lucas smiled, walking over to wrap his arms around her from behind. You're not going to lose me. Not ever. How can you be so sure? Because I've found the one thing I never thought I'd want you. And that kind of love. You don't let it go. She turned in his arms, heart full. I love you, Lucas. He kissed her forehead. I've loved you longer than I realized. And as they stood there, paint on her fingers and love in their eyes, Amelia knew. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Together they had conquered the shadows. And now they would grow in the light. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Lucas tilted her chin gently, his gaze firm and full of emotion. I know your heart is still healing, Em, and I know it's going to take time. But I'm here for all of it. The hard days, the silent moments, the fears you try to hide. I want it all. Tears pooled in her eyes. But for once, they weren't from pain. They were from peace. I never thought I'd find someone who sees me and stays, she whispered. You don't have to hide anymore, he replied. Not your past, not your art, not your light. He leaned in and kissed her. Not with urgency, but with assurance. It was a kiss that said, you are safe, you are mine, and I'm not going anywhere. Later that evening, they sat on the porch of her now beautiful cottage, watching the sky turn from gold to violet. The faint hum of crickets in the background blended with the soft music drifting from inside. Her head rested on his shoulder, his fingers lazily drawing circles on her arm. I want to turn the spare room into an art school, she said suddenly. Lucas turned to her, surprised. You do? She nodded. For women like me, women who were told they weren't enough, who were told to shrink their dreams. I want them to find color again. I want them to find themselves again. He grinned. Now that's the woman I fell in love with. She chuckled. It's scary, though. Good. The best things are. He squeezed her hand, and in that quiet space between their words, something new settled between them, certainty. The small twist that threatened to derail them had only solidified what they already knew. They weren't just in love, they were partners in healing, partners in life. That night as they climbed into bed, Lucas pulled her close and whispered, one day, you're going to realize you're stronger than everything that tried to break you. I already do, she replied, because I finally have someone who reminds me of it every single day. And in the hush of that sacred moment, beneath the stars and behind closed doors, their love bloomed, bold, beautiful, and unstoppable. A few weeks had passed since the storm, since Lucas had held Amelia in his arms and reminded her of who she truly was. Life had slowly settled into something that resembled peace, beautiful, ordinary, and yet extraordinary in its own way. Lucas, once the man who kept emotions buried under layers of charm and detachment, was now the man who made breakfast every Sunday morning, who paused meetings to send Amelia silly memes, who walked her through art galleries and made her feel like her presence could silence a room. Amelia, the woman who once thought love was pain and silence was safety, now laughed freely, kissed him in public, and planned community art sessions from the once dusty spare room in her cottage. They were evolving, individually and together. One evening, Amelia stood in front of her easel, a new canvas, half finished. It was a portrait of two people walking into a forest, holding hands, with wildflowers blooming at their feet. Lucas stepped in quietly and watched her, awe glowing in his eyes. "You always paint your feelings," he said softly. She turned. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," he replied. "It's what makes your art more alive than most people's lives." She smiled, wiped her paint-streaked hands, and walked toward him. "I've been thinking." "Dangerous," he teased. She nudged him, laughing. "I want to open a small studio, not just for women, but for kids too. The ones in the neighborhood who can't afford classes, but have magic in their fingertips." Lucas took her hands in his. "Then we'll do it." She blinked. "We?" "Yeah, we," he said, pulling out a folded sheet from his pocket. It was a proposal draft, a blueprint of a space, sketches of gallery and classroom setup, and a list of names. Her name was at the top. Amelia looked at it, then at him, stunned. "Lucas, you inspire me, Em. You taught me that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means growing through it, and I want to build something real with you. Something lasting." She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, he pulled out a small box and went down on one knee, not in a restaurant or on some grand vacation, but in the center of her art room, surrounded by unfinished dreams that were finally being completed. "I never believed in love, until I saw it in your broken smile, until I felt it in your courage. Will you marry me, Amelia? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you that you are and always have been worthy?" Tears flowed freely as she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times. Yes." They embraced, paint smudging both their clothes, laughter spilling between kisses. In that room of color and love and healing, a new chapter began. The weeks that followed felt like something out of a dream. Except this time, it wasn't one Amelia would ever want to wake up from. The morning sun poured through the windows of their shared home, lighting up a room now filled with vibrant canvases, framed sketches, and half-wrapped wedding gifts. The cottage, once a place of hiding and sorrow, had become a haven, a home bursting with life, color, and laughter. Wedding preparations were in full swing. Amelia had decided she didn't want a huge, over-the-top celebration. She wanted something intimate, personal, something that reflected their story, the quiet strength it took to love again after so much loss. Lucas, in his usual thoughtful way, had agreed, but that didn't stop him from going above and beyond. The invitations were handwritten and delivered with pressed wildflowers. The venue, a small botanical garden in the city, filled with blooming hibiscus, lilies, and soft lantern lights that twinkled like stars. He had chosen it because Amelia once said, "Flowers are proof that the world wants us to be happy, even after storms." But amidst the wedding planning, another dream quietly took shape. Her art studio. The space Lucas had shown her on paper months ago was now a real building. A light-filled corner studio in the heart of the community, where children came every Saturday to create. Walls were covered with drawings, sculptures, collages, each one signed proudly by tiny hands and used dreams. She called it Canvas of Hope. Opening day was magical. Amelia stood by the entrance in a cream blouse and jeans, her hair swept up casually, with paint on her fingertips and joy in her heart. Lucas, by her side, watched with pride as parents came in with children, neighbors stopped by to donate, and volunteers helped set up easels and color trays. One little girl, no older than 6, ran up to her with a crayon sketch and whispered, "I want to paint like you when I grow up." Amelia knelt and hugged her, blinking back tears. That night, exhausted and overwhelmed with gratitude, Amelia and Lucas sat by the fireplace at home. The wedding was only a week away, but in many ways they already felt married, bound by purpose, friendship, and the kind of love that makes you brave again. You gave me everything, she said softly. A second chance, a voice, a place to belong. Lucas held her hand. You gave me reason, Em. For the first time, I'm not running from life. I'm running to it. With you. They clinked wine glasses and stared into the flames, dreaming of the life ahead. The wedding came as perfect as they'd imagined. Just close friends, light music, and vows exchanged under the stars. Amelia wore a simple, elegant gown with hand-painted flowers at the hem, a touch she added herself. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off her, not once. And when he kissed her that night, under the canopy of fairy lights, everyone knew. This wasn't just a love story. This was a testimony of healing, of choosing love again, of rising from the ashes with color in your hands. As the guests danced and the night deepened, Amelia looked around, at the people who came to celebrate, at the man who chose her every day, and at the life she had built from scratch. She smiled. Her story wasn't just about pain anymore. It was about power, about fire that no longer burned, but warmed. The end. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. 1.